Hey guys, so today I'm going to be making one of my favorite dishes from my childhood, Okinawa Soba. I wanted to start filming the process of making food to help me learn and expose others to it as well. I've learned a lot from my obachan and want to continue making flavors that I grew up with, so let's get started. I forgot to film the beginning of this process, but what I've done here is bring a couple of pounds of pork neck to boil, and you want to discard that water and then rinse them off very well. I'm trying to make a clear soup, or chintan, so it's necessary to remove all the impurities. Then just fill up your pot with fresh water and bring it to a boil and simmer for 5 to 7 hours uncovered for clarity. I've also made a concentrated dashi stock of katsuboshi / bonito flakes, which is a dried, fermented, and smoked skipjack tuna, but sometimes is substituted with bonito, and some kombu, which is a Japanese dried kelp. It's important to soak the kombu overnight to release the umami, and then you want to remove it before it boils, or ideally around 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you're going to place the fish flakes, whether they're katsuboshi or bonito, in the water and then turn off the heat and steep it for 5 to 10 minutes before straining. After my broth has been strained, I'm going to pour the dashi into the broth, and then I'm just going to salt to taste. Optionally, you can add some MSG to help boost the flavors. So next, I have a slab of pork belly, which is definitely one of the best parts of this bowl. Specifically, I have pork belly with skin on. In Okinawa, it's called semainiku, which translates to 3-layer meat, because of the skin, fat, and meat. And I've just been boiling it for 2 hours with a Japanese beer. I used Asahi, but feel free to use Sapporo, Kirin Ichiban, or you can honestly even use a regular beer. If you want to use white wine, then use that. This is just going to help tenderize the meat and give it a little bit more flavor. I'm also going to be making a quick tare, which is a sauce, or for this is a braising liquid for the meat. It's just soy sauce, sake, and mirin, which is a seasoned Japanese rice wine. It may be a little sweet, a little salty, depending on what you get. You don't need this, but if you want to sub it for some sugar or some honey, then that'll work too. Before adding the tare to the pan and braising the semainiku, I'm going to char what I like to call the Japanese mirepoix, which is green onion, garlic, and ginger. After you boil the pork belly, it's best to let it cool for a couple hours in the fridge. It's going to make it way easier to slice, but if you're impatient and starving like I am, and you really just want to burn your fingers while slicing, then go ahead and slice it after you boil it. And I do thick cuts because that's how it's traditionally served, but feel free to go as thin or as thick as you want. After your green onion, ginger, and garlic have been charred, you're just going to put the sauce right in the pan, and then follow that with the pork belly and braise on each side for 30 minutes on low. You don't want to be cooking this a ton. We just want to go for nice and tender, but you still want to have a nice bite to it. So really low, cover it 30 minutes, flip it over, and then another 30 minutes. After I've strained the broth, I'm actually going to take the pork neck and separate the meat from the bones for later use. Now for the toppings, which are always really simple, and there's only a few of them. I like to do thick cuts of green onions and kamaboko, which is a Japanese fish cake. It's very similar to naruto maki, which is the swirled fish cake that you usually see in a lot of pictures. But the only difference between kamaboko and naruto is the naruto is in a swirl pattern. Feel free to go thinner if you want on these. The only other toppings we're going to use here are pickled ginger, which is this beautiful red contrast on the bowl, and it's going to add a nice sharp acidic tone. Alright, so the noodles are pretty important for this, and definitely the hardest ingredient to get depending on where you are. I was lucky enough to get my hands on Okinawa soba noodles from Sun Noodles, which Okinawa soba and Japanese soba are very different though, so don't get those confused. These noodles are very similar to ramen noodles in that they're an alkaline noodle, which just means that the pH is a lot higher on these noodles, which is going to give them a great chew and a nice texture. If you don't have access to these, then you can use udon noodles or ramen noodles if you have access to that. If not, you can really use any type of dry pasta, but getting real soba noodles is going to make a big difference. This is a simple dish that feels homey and tastes delicious, and I hope that you can enjoy it as much as I do. It's really just such a comfort food, and definitely one of the most delicious things I've ever eaten. Itadakimasu.